Welcome to this episode of The Once and Future Parents. I'm about to become a parent. I'm talking to two good friends and fellow podcasters who are already parents, and they're giving me advice like, don't start a podcast just as you're about to become a parent. But because I'm not listening to that advice, here we are. And today we're going to start out, at least, we'll let the conversation go where it will, but we're going to start out at least talking about things like baby showers and gender reveals, because that's about where I am in the journey. And let me just start by letting you two guys say hello and introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about, did you guys have a baby shower? Let's start there.
Yes. I had a wonderful baby shower. Very traditional, all women. And my best friend's mom worked events up at this beautiful place called the Skirball Center in Los Angeles here.
Mhm.
So I kept saying, this is like a Kardashian shower. When I think of a shower, I think of a backyard and some,
Yeah.
punch and people you love and dumb games. This was, because of the connection through my friend's mom, this was really glamorous and high-end and exciting. And I loved it.
Nice.
I loved having all the ladies I love all together and excited.
And what was the idea for it being specifically all women? Was that something you particularly wanted, or that was what the tradition was?
I think that's the tradition, and a lot of my close friends are women, and they just hopped into action, and yeah, it just worked out that way.
Makes sense.
Ours was, I guess, non-traditional. We didn't put a lot of thought into tradition. It was just like, it was mostly it was couples, because and one solo friend who just wasn't coupled at the time. But mostly couples, definitely not just women. And I remember mostly my in-laws gave us a stroller that was like a transformer. And I spent most of the shower just sort of blacked out under the contraption that was this cockamamie stroller, and lost to all of festivities. But it was, my wife kind of ran the show, or I should say my mother ran the show. And as far as I remember, she was there, I think. It's been a long time.
That's fair.
But
That's fair.
It was definitely, it was a good affair. And it was, we did not find out the gender. I guess we'll get to that, but we didn't find out the gender for our kids before they were born. So ours were just naturally, gender neutral everything.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And we knew the gender. Well, we knew the biological sex. We'll get into what all those terms mean and why it's important. But we decided not to reveal until after the baby shower, particularly because we didn't want to get a whole bunch of pink gifts or blue gifts, etc. And we'll talk more about that. But yeah, our party was thrown primarily by my, I guess, stepmother-in-law, my wife's stepmother, my father-in-law's wife. Lovely woman, and she was incredibly kind to put this together. And she worked in partnership with some of the other mothers who were involved. And we were told that this was her party at which we were guests of honor, and so did not have much input into it. We did not try to put the gifts together at the time, but we did receive an awful lot of gifts. Just because of the vicissitudes of this thing, we did put together a registry. A lot of people went off registry, which is great. It means our child has nothing to wear until they are 3 months old, can go all of month 3 to month 6 with never having to wear the same outfit twice, and then I think has 4 outfits to wear from month 6 to month 12.
To graduation from college.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't grow further beyond that.
And I could still rock a onesie. So,
dare to dream.
If we have to raise money for the podcast, that's a good. Anyway, that's a very different kind of mommy activity.
Took a turn.
There we go. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was, I think, really sweet. I think more than anything, it felt like it was a way for everyone in our families to come together and be like, "Hey, you're going to be a parent. That's cool." In our case, it was a little complicated because, as I think I mentioned last episode, my partner Mary, her sister Alona, is also pregnant. Yep. They're going to have their babies about 4 weeks apart. And so it was a joint baby shower for both of us. And so there's a lot of etiquette of sort of like, do my parents get her, Alona gifts and vice versa and all this kind of thing. And add on the fact that we're both polyamorous. So there was just all sorts of love and all sorts of gifts. And my girlfriend gave the best gift to them. So like we kind of won, I won. So we were happy that way in terms of all the different partners doing great things. but yeah, it was just a beautiful occasion. And kind of, it was, although definitely all gender, which I thought was nice. And it did make me curious. And for our listeners, if you want to write in, give us thoughts. Probably we're gonna be posting this about 4 months from now, but still we'll be talking about it. I'm curious. My sense is that is shifting, but I'm particularly curious. And Mandy, maybe when baby showers are all women or all whatever gender when baby showers are single gender for the mother and her folk, the other parent, or the other potential parent, did your husband do anything with his guy friends to kind of be like, hey, you're about to have a baby?
Well, first of all, my husband has never done anything productive.
Okay.
Still hasn't. We're going up. We're coming up on 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I want to backstep for a moment, and then I'll talk about what they did. But you said something that was so, I think, important. You were talking about, who was invited, and do you get a gift, and do you not, and the etiquette. And the truth is, Matthew, world, you can't win. Someone's going to be pissed off. You're going to fail somebody. You're going to thrill somebody else. And that's one of the things about parenting in general. You think you're crushing it, but the kid gets sick anyway, or the kid fails that class anyway, or, it's so to take the pressure off of all of us and say, well, somebody's going to be offended. Someone's going to screw this up, I think helps.
You're telling me the 18 years of plans that I've mapped out aren't going to go exactly as I've planned?
No, those will. Those will.
Only those.
But, I am not, my husband and I are not very traditional. I don't wear an apron and have a martini by the door when he comes home from work. That's not who we are. Around the time of getting married and having a baby, however, it felt a little more that way.
Yeah,
I think his dad took him and they had brunch with his friend, and and it was male and macho, and they showed up at the end just to thank the lady folk for all the presents. It felt pretty traditional. But that's not who we are on a day-to-day basis. But I was knocked up.
Yeah.
Can't get more traditional than that.
How many shotguns are available?
In the kitchen.
Right.
I think the other piece is that, at least from my perspective, we adopted more traditional roles, performative roles than we would normally identify as, because we were young and didn't know how to do anything else. Like, we inherited the things that our parents were doing because they were doing it. And most of the time they were paying for it. So if that meant we had to do some things that were of a more traditional nature by today's value system, then we did it because we were broke and we did what we were told. And that's just kind of the way it was. And weirdly, we felt wildly progressive when it came to biological sex because we didn't know. We didn't have to do any of the gender reveal stuff. That all feels remarkably modern from where from where we were, which was, we just don't know. We don't want to know. We want to be surprised. We don't want any responsibility to, have people buy us gendered gifts. Yeah. And that was a bit anomalous when we were having our kids. Like, I think everybody science could tell us, so why don't we know,
Yeah. No, I think this makes a lot of sense. And I think, kind of, Mandy, especially what you got on, but Peter, you're also echoing this. I think we're this interesting moment in time where we have a lot of traditions that have their basis in a lot of good stuff and in a lot of really bad stuff, in terms of like the gendered roles that are expected and, bridal showers versus strip clubs and bachelor parties and things like that, and baby showers being single gendered and all that. And I think a lot of things that I'm seeing, especially people my generation and younger, we're all basically the same generation, but it's people sort of wrestling, people who are going through these ceremonies in the last 10, 15 years or so, but also older, is folks going, okay, well, these rituals all have this basis and a lot of crap we don't want to take on. But we still want a ritual, and so we might as well do the ritual that we know, or we might as well, in a lot of cases, there was like 15 years of just throwing out all of that. And then people going, but wait, I missed some parts of it. I missed having that bonding moment with my friends around what's happening. Like just the financial place of where you are my partner and I my partner and I are both fairly established in our careers, especially her. She's definitely the breadwinner. And so we're in a place where it was very nice to do this, and we certainly received a lot of wonderful gifts. We're very glad for them, but we would have been financially able to provide for them. And I think that creates a situation that's very different, Pete, than what you're talking about there. And I think so many of these factors go into who gets to make the decision, whose traditions is it that matter. We didn't have too much of that, but we definitely played some games that I found very eye-rolly. But we're just sort of, this is what you do.
Did you do anything with melted chocolate in a diaper? Because that one, we could be done with that forever.
We did not. I probably would have put my foot down, by which I mean I would have literally taken off my prosthetic foot, put it down, and said, no, this is not happening.
You have so many more power moves than
I know. That's a real...
do so much.
That is a real housewife move, Matthew. Yeah. If you ever were to do that, that happened on Real Housewives.
And, oh my gosh. And I get good barking. So, I'm kind of winning. But
winning.
Disabled, better abled, please. But yeah, so I think all this is just so fascinating. And you're right. I think especially today, like a lot of these traditions also come from a time when everyone is in the same place. And so one of our hardest things was we had people who we wanted to let them know that we were thinking of them and that they would be invited if they wanted to make the trip, but that we certainly didn't expect them to make the trip.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we also aren't paying for them to make the trip.
And we're not paying for them to make the trip, or we just don't want to take the health considerations on of them making the trip for older folk. And so then there was the question of like, how do I let them know it's happening in a way that they feel included without it feeling like, hey, but we want to get you to give us a gift, And so there's just so much stuff. And the other thing that at least I saw about it, I'm curious for you all, was, and again, this is not the tradition originally, but I think it's becoming this. It was a nice way for Mary and I to realize how different our families are about these things. Because my New York Jewish family, I'm half Jewish. My mother's side was Christian, but they're mostly out of the picture now. But my Jewish family's rituals and my wife's Midwestern, Nordic roots are very, very different. And so that was also kind of like, there were definitely a lot of stuff that I was rolling my eyes at that my dad would catch my eye and be like, what are these Minnesota hicks doing? And I'd be like, well, I can afford to live here. What do you do?
I need some examples of that, because I think that's fascinating. And I did not have, we grew up 6 blocks away from my wife in our hometown. So we had like our cultural differences were 6 blocks. Like that's it. So I'm curious how that manifested. Like what stood out?
First of all, the food. The food was great. I really appreciated it, but it was very kind of like Midwestern brunchy food. Which among other things meant no alcohol, which probably makes sense for a baby shower in general, but still is New York is New York. But also just I think like the game, like there was kind of like a trivia game of like who can know these things. The way people sort of introduce each other in themselves to each other is just very different. So it was, I think my stepmother said that the amount of homemade gifts was really surprising, in terms of like a lot of people made blankets for us and baby clothes for us and stuff like that in ways that my stepmother did, because she herself,
my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no,
I don't have the ability to do that. I'm the least crafty person on the planet. But one of my dearest friends wrote a song for the shower and performed it. And that's the thing I remember. I don't remember who got us the baby Bjorn or the bottles, but I remember, Mandy singing and playing guitar at my shower.
And I think that's so beautiful because, like I said, to me, it very much has that aura of this is all of your community and family coming together. Very much, I think, in a way that traditionally would have happened through the church, through the synagogue, through whatever religious community. But instead of saying like, we are going to be here for you, we're going to be, the it takes a village idea really coming out.
Yeah.
Well, again, you can't win for trying. If you didn't play the games, some people would be upset. You played the games, the other people are upset. It's just all a balancing act.
Yep. That makes sense.
I want to talk about your perspectives on this blog post that you sent us, that you wrote to folks about biological sex and gender reveal and the performative nature of sex as it relates to babies right now.
Yeah.
Because we again inherited traditions. There were things that we did, and the way we talked about things that and the language we used that was just the way that we did it. We didn't
Right.
know any better, and there were no forces pushing against us to do anything different.
For sure. Yeah, let me talk a bit about this, and I made a post, and we'll probably put it in the show notes. But I want to kind of go over here because I think it's a really interesting topic. I say about thoughts in my own head, but hopefully you all feel the same way.
Well, and particularly how it relates to your older generation family. Like, how are they
Right.
handling these kinds of things?
For sure. Because it's been an interesting one. And so just some background that and I will say none of this is I made it clear in the message I sent, but very clear to you and to the listeners. None of this is meant to be scolding in any way. There are people like myself and my partner who are intentionally trying to change some traditions as a better recognition of just how much our understanding of gender and sex and biology have changed in the last 20 or 30 years, and also how much it's under attack. But none of this, I think, is like. So I'm going to try to claim. I'm going to try and define some terms, but also understand that these terms are used colloquially in different ways, and that I screw them up in those ways as well. So just to be clear, what we're talking about, when the medical technician is able to say, okay, you're going to have a boy, you're going to have a girl, what they mean is that they are able to detect either the presence or absence of a penis. That quite literally, that's what it is. The present, and sometimes there can be other like DNA testing and stuff like that. And so they can tell either by visual understanding or by chromosomes the best guess as to what sex the baby will present as when it is born. Mm-hmm. And if it sounds like I'm being rather convoluted in my language, that's intentional because, and I think this is a thing that most people don't understand, the question of biological sex is incredibly complicated. If you say, oh, it's just even just those two things, you say, oh, it's just defined by chromosomes. There's like 8 different combinations of chromosomes, many of which are primarily women, many of which are primarily men, some of which are kind of confusing. Penis or no penis is different than that and doesn't always line up with chromosomes, as well as intersex people. People can be born with both sets of genitalia or neither or something kind of in between. But as a general rule, the way we think of it is those biological tests can tell us what sex is the baby most likely to be, boxed in as part of when it is born. And obviously, there's a very high correlation between the biological sex, as we understand it there to begin with, the biological sex characteristics, because sex is not entirely biological either, or is much more open than people think it is, but between those characteristics and gender. And it's really important for us, in part for me, because I'm non-binary. I'm not, my biology would indicate male, and I'm masculine presenting, but I'm not a man. I'm non-binary. But certainly we know and love lots of people in our families and friend groups and communities who are, their gender is very different than what their biology might initially suppose. And we have no idea what that's going to be for our child. And our conscious decision is, so in terms of the gender of our child, my answer traditionally has been, we don't know because the child isn't old enough to tell us yet. And they'll tell us when they tell us. And what they tell us at one age will probably be different than what they tell us at another age. And that's just fine. And if a 4-year-old says my gender is a fire truck, then they're a fire truck. And that's okay. People are going to make their laughing, jokes about this, but that's the point. It should be wide open. Sorry, if we go into a lecture, please interrupt me with questions or comments or thoughts as we go.
Well, one thing I want to say, Matthew, all of these things are very thought-provoking and important. And, we're trying to progress society to a place where we can all open our minds and hearts. But when we're talking about your family unit, you and your partner, and you find out the born sex of your child, and again, forgive me if I use language that is not completely progressive.
My point is that the language isn't perfect. We don't all have perfect language yet.
But I think that if you're at a gender reveal and you're cutting that cake, the idea is, as long as you celebrate whether that cake is blue inside, pink inside, or purple inside, or yellow, whatever it is, you're celebrating. It's just a ritual in my mind to say we're excited you're bringing life into the world and you're going to be a parent in a family. And it is fun to cut the cake and find out, oh, you're having a boy, oh, you're having a girl. So, I guess my question to you is, what was your emotional response to finding out your child will be born male.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the big reveal there is that part of it.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. We're gonna jump ahead in the story, but that's fine.
Mandy Kaplan, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I love it. I love it.
Oh my God. I mean, maybe, possibly.
I mean, the child's not old enough.
Let me just
Right.
say a little bit more about framing it and then
Please.
get to what you're saying.
Please.
So, because I think there are people who go a lot further than we wind up doing. There are people we know and love, and I think they're doing a great job of parenting, who've decided that because of this, they're going to utterly ignore biology and raise their child kind of genderless until the child picks a gender. And there's a child who's been a part of our lives, part of our extended family, that I had no idea the biology of until one point I helped change their diaper. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I know that now. That was what they chose to do. Mary and I were like, that feels like making our child a social experiment in a way we're not quite ready for. So the way we framed it is after the baby shower, we told people biological indications are that the child will start life as a boy. If it continues that, great. If it changes that at some point, gender and sex, not totally linked, etc. So with that knowledge, I think my reaction was, at first we kind of braced ourselves about, do we want to know? And I decided, yeah, it was good to know. And I think my first thought was mostly just like, okay, now I can kind of like start ordering my thoughts a little bit, because, and this is, I think, kind of what we're wrestling with, is that there is a lot of, okay, how much do you want that knowledge of the potential gender of your child to affect things and how you do them and how you don't? And I think with what I really wrestle with and what Mary and I have been talking a lot about is how do we, not as much how do we want to raise our child in a world given their gender, but how do we help combat the fact that the whole world is going to be telling a lot of things to our child based on their gender? And I think one of our first thoughts was, this is kind of a rough time right now to be raising boys.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I think there should be concerns about all children, but, one of our first thoughts was, okay, how do we think about like what, wasn't even a matter of concern as much as like, okay, so let's do some more reading on toxic masculinity and how do you raise children without that and stuff like that. I think for me, there wasn't really a emotional response. It's more just a sort of like, oh, okay, there are a lot of different possible roads that could be in front of us. Now we know which potential road we're starting on.
And Pete, what was your emotional response? What was the moment like when you found out? Because it wasn't a technician just saying, do you want to know the sex, right? It was upon birth.
Yeah.
Can I spoil the gender of your children? No, I won't.
Well, it is interesting because, I think in some respects, I think it doesn't matter what you're going to do, what you call the kids, what your grandparents call the kids, what the kids, are for those first years. The kids are going to determine what they are on their own. They'll figure it out. They know who they are. And if that means they're going to feel strongly enough to say, you know what, I am not who I've been because of that's what you performed me as, and I'm something different, and all y'all are going to have to learn the new me, then that's what you're going to have to do. That is certainly what happened for us, right? I mean, we had, I have a daughter who is non-binary. And those are the terms that they have maintained, and we all just learned. And there is a future for them that is going to be amazing and awesome, and I love it. And I have a son who is my son, he, him, and he came to terms with his own sexuality. And they're adults, and they are who they are. I had so little to do with any of that. I just got to be along for the ride. So I think to some extent, I hear you, Matthew, and I hear you talking about it with such fantastic authenticity. And my first reflection, to be quite honest, is you're sort of making the choice to, and I don't want to say, this is going to sound like an overly aggressive word, but you're making a choice to pick a cultural fight that you don't have to pick, right? You don't have to correct people. The kids are good. Your family unit's going to be fine. And I'm curious where that comes from. I know you well enough now that I kind of know where that comes from.
So
but I'd like to hear you talk about it.
I think that you are giving the rest of parents too much credit and assuming they're as good as you.
I'm better.
But yeah, clearly.
That was
One
I'll
better.
take that as the compliment.
What I mean by that is I hear what you're saying and I want to honor and validate that it was your lived experience. But studies and science have told us that's not true. The more that a child is gendered in a particular way, the higher the chance that their experience, that if they are transgender in some way, that experience is going to be accompanied by trauma of some kind, possibly ending in self-harm, possibly ending in unaliving themselves.
No, that's really fair, and I don't want to say that as if I'm dismissing the fact that for some the journey toward discovery absolutely exists in the form of a fight with culture on their own that can be deeply traumatic, and I absolutely understand that. And ours was just not that. So
well, and I also think that we're sort of in this weird cultural moment where, like, transgender people we're much more aware of them and their existence, and they're a much larger part of society and societal culture than they were, I think, when your children were little.
Yeah.
But also the attacks against them are much higher right now. To some extent, and people claim, it's because trans people are pushing themselves so much more. We all know that's nonsense. It's just that the attacks against them are so much worse. And this, I think, is going to be an issue that we'll talk about a lot, because for me, I'm a social justice focused person. I can't watch television without thinking about the social justice ramifications of it. And so there's a part of me that's like, yeah, that's true for everything. And I think a lot about this podcast for me may well be is me getting off my soapbox about my political feelings about parenthood, so I don't put them out on my child, and you two can talk me down from it.
I do think, Matthew, that the first step always has to be what you have in your house, in your home with your family. And that will be a safe, loving, accepting environment.
Exactly.
And then once that's established, the three of you might want to try and change the world. Or, you and Mary might want to try to change the world on behalf of your child. But I loved the way Pete phrased it, because he's brilliant. The picking a social fight is what you said.
Yeah.
And there's only so much you can control. And first you got to get through keeping the baby alive for the first year when they can't tell you that they have an earache. There's so much that I always come from the emotional place. You always come from the cerebral place. And I hope we meet in the middle. Just love that child. And sometimes things happen in your journey where you're not prepared, but you'll catch up and you'll figure it out. And I mean, in terms of gender and sexuality and gender fluidity and all of these things, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
And
I guess I really want to harp on that, because I think that's, at the end of the day, that is why we put out that statement and why we handle things with our family the way they do. Because it's not that I want some random person who follows me on Facebook to change the way they parent. It's that we don't want our child to get a whole bunch of dinosaurs and no dresses because of their genitalia.
There's a very practical reason. Yeah.
Yeah. We in many ways, that was exactly what Mary said to a lot of her family as a kind of follow-up, is that we want you to know that this child is going to present masculine, but we don't want that to, if you see a pink outfit, get it for our child, And I think that's, because to me, that is where it starts. And I think it's funny you say cerebral, because for me, it's coming from, this feels incredibly emotional because I'm terrified. I think it is a terrifying time to try to raise a child, knowing that depending on how the child turns out in terms of who they love or who they want to be, my government is going to declare them wrong or illegal. That they're all, right now I'm now aware that I can't fly anymore with my driver's license. We all have to go to Real ID and stuff like that, but I can't use my Minnesota ID because my Minnesota ID says that I'm non-binary, which isn't recognized by the federal government anymore. So yeah, and again, it is just one of many, many concerns I think that we have, to be clear. But I think that's why for us it is I can't control. if the baby is going to be born with some congenital issue, or, the umbilical cord is going to do something terrible. Like, there's so many things we can't control, but our parents accidentally, out of the absolute love that they have, pushing gender on a child in a way that's going to be harmful. That's one thing we can control. So,
Yeah.
Well, you've always been very patient and open with me. And when I have slipped up and said you have said, people slip up. It's okay. And I hope that your family gets the same grace if
very much
they,
so.
want to buy a pink or a Tonka truck and, and they want to force that. Hopefully it's out of love.
Yeah.
And newsflash, your parents are going to drive you freaking crazy for the rest of your life, kid or no kid. I mean, they're going to enforce their will and the way they think things should be done. And my mom accused us of trying to kill our baby every day that she was here when Casey was born, because we either put too many clothes on him and he was too hot and uncomfortable, or we didn't have socks on him and he was going to die of hypothermia. Yeah. And that was her belief, and it drove us insane. But she is a wonderful grandmother and loves him to pieces. And, it's,
yeah.
I know these are bigger issues than what I'm saying, but these are obviously, those things are trivial. What you're talking about is not trivial. It's massively important and cellular for all of us. But I hope that if all your family is trying to masculine him up, that it's out of love. I hope it's out of love. And if not, give me their names and addresses.
They'll have wheelchair tracks on them. Don't worry about it. I think that is absolutely the best thing to remember with all this. And that goes all the way back to our weddings as well. People, there's an awful lot of harm that is done by people acting out of love, but also it gets even worse when you just see the harm, when you're not able to see that, and so there may be a lot of gifts that we are incredibly thankful for and that stay in the box in the back of the closet somewhere. But I also want to, I think because it's a thing we're talking about and because it's a thing we're posting on, I think it's very easy to think this is what we're focusing on, when in reality, like, I spent about an hour writing this and talking about it with Mary, and we spent probably just as much time. We picked out the exact stroller we wanted. And yes, it took a long time to put together, and I have nothing to do with that. It is all my wife, because we're breaking that gender stereotype. And we have a crib that already we've had to order new parts to build because it's like, space age and quantum physics in some way that I don't understand. And that's just, but just that's not the stuff we post online and trying to educate about, because it's not hitting the same way. But no, I think you're very right about all that. And one of my favorite stories about how you can't, the more you can try and like protect your child from these things or shape your child, but it's not going to matter. My mother was very adamant, apparently early on. She was a 1960s hippie. She was very adamant that I not be exposed to violence and that I never be given toy guns or anything like that. And so a lot of times we had the news on at my household, but I never got to watch violent stuff. Even if it was like just Muppets hitting each other or stuff like that. She didn't want me watching any of that. And so I was maybe like 4 or 5 years old when the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan happened. John Hinckley trying to shoot the president to impress Jodie Foster and that whole mess.
I know about it because there was a musical about it.
Assassins. Yeah. It's a great musical.
Yeah.
I know about it because of the skateboard.
That too. And so, you look into that and so apparently, according to my mother, I'm not old enough to have remembered it, but I watched that on the news with them because it was on the news. And then I grabbed my fork or something like that. And I ran around pointing it like a gun, shouting, "I shot the president. I shot the president." And just realized any NSA agents listening in on that. That's right. Not, I'm talking about a reaction to a news story. Please understand that.
Childhood memory.
But, and my mother always talked about that as an example of like, this stuff is all around us, Yeah. Gender, white supremacy, heterosexism, violence in the media, all these things are going to be there. And so as parents, I think with more than anything, we don't want to try to control. We want to try and have sort of soft landing spaces for everything. Right. We can't have them not watch violence. We want to talk to them about the violence. We can't have them not see misogyny on TV. We want to talk to them about that. And, we got about 10 years to figure out how to keep them away from the manosphere. And I hope the manosphere is dead as a doornail by then. But, we'll see what happens.
Okay, I have two questions that are vastly simple by comparison.
Go for it.
I think I know the answer. How do you handle foul language, traditionally foul language, swearing in the house?
I fucking hate swearing. It's utterly horrible. Only
For
assholes
your
do it.
child.
So this is an area where, with great reluctance, I'm going to bow to social pressure, because my mother was very liberal and very out there, and I loved it, and I think I got a very good upbringing because of it. And it was only years later that I figured out I didn't have many childhood playdates, because a lot of the other mothers thought my mom was a wacko, commie, pinko, sex freak, because she didn't mind us seeing nudity on television, and so wouldn't let other kids come and play at my house. I think I'm very much of the George Carlin idea of that we give these words too much power.
Yep.
But if my child saying them is going to make some other child say them and get that child in trouble, and therefore get my child labeled in a bad way, I don't want that. So it is something we're going to be careful about. We're going to adjust and dial back. There's an extent to which, here's a cultural difference. Do you guys consider the word damn and hell curse words?
Well, I
in
don't.
the context, not for me, but in the context of things that Casey, please don't go to other people's homes and say these things. Then I would put Jesus Christ number one, because you don't know who you're going to offend. Damn and hell. Those are in that context considered profanity.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think that's where we drew the line with our kids, and similar to the other conversation, we like the kids are going to do what the kids do. Like we have a kind of strict we don't fear words policy in our house, and
right.
For me, tend to be more liberal about my swearing, and my wife is more conservative. She doesn't care for it as much, but we don't fear the words themselves. Like you said, we talk about the words, we talk about using the words, we talk about how when you stub your toe and you happen to have on deck a perfect swear, it can feel less painful to you when you get to swear about it. And we should be okay with that when you're wandering around the house. And also, my son, who grew up sort of, now he's in college, swears like a sailor, like he's really adapted to it quite well. My daughter does not care for it, and actually actively, it's quite adorable, actively practices swearing for cultural appropriateness. Like when they're alone in the kitchen, I'll hear them say, shit, fuck, shit, fuck. Like just practicing in their head, kind of saying it like to themselves.
Is that the one who came to college here in Minnesota?
No, that was my wife who came to college in Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
That's where she graduated. So I think it's fascinating how like my daughter does not actively naturally swear, even raised in a house where we do, or I do, and my son does very well. But now he knows when to rein it in at home because mom doesn't care for it as much. So like they adapt, they learn, they are cultural magnets. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have any verboten terms, right?
Right.
Like we just have to understand the words because all words have power, and understanding how to use them is the exercise of that power.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I think learning, I like that model of learning to be aware of your audience and therefore selective with your words instead of thinking of words as inherently bad is one I really like, but it's one I'm really curious about. Like, I think we talked before about screen time and being really aware of like, when are children going to pick up on the fact that, for me, in part due to my anxiety and stuff like that, I'm just more comfortable if there's always like TV or radio on or stuff like that. And so the idea of like, if I'm going to be holding a baby in my arms while they're not really aware of those noises, that sounds great. But at the point they become aware of it, that changes pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
What was your second question?
given your presentation is non-binary, have you put thought into what you would like your child to call you in their early years?
I think we're thinking Papa instead of necessarily like Daddy or Dad or Father. But it's
Have
something
you
I'm still.
considered Maddie? Because I'd like to start calling you Maddie.
Well, I'm not paying for you to go to college, Pete. So probably that's the thing. I am very adamant that my name is Matthew.
Yeah.
I have a lot of bullying tied up with being called Matt or Maddie or things like
Okay.
that. So that
All right.
particular one wouldn't work. But
Fair.
yeah, and it's also been interesting to me seeing. And here's actually a question I'll throw to you guys: how did your parents choose what grand names they would have?
Oh, I would like to answer that, but I would also like to put in the ring, if you're still considering
Yeah.
options, your lordship. Just think about it. Rolls off the tongue.
I mean, it does. It does. My mother always insisted she wanted to be king, not queen. So that was maybe also
Nice.
part of where we learned, kind of non-gendered ideas of power.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I am. Jeremy and I had Casey after all of our siblings had their kids. So Casey was born into having grandma and grandpa on Jer's side, and my mom wanted to be nanny. I don't know why. When my nephew was born, and my father and stepmother are Bubba and Nani, and they were already established. It was
Right.
all predisposed. But I remember the talks, and when my mom said, "I want to be nanny," my stepmom was like, "Okay." First of all, it's a little weird, nanny, but
Right.
so my stepmom was like, "Then I'll be Nani," and they just picked, and they all negotiated, and it all worked beautifully.
We have my mom picked Nani. Also, Nani was like her mother was Nani to her grandkids, and so that was easy. My dad's nickname from when he was a child was Lolo, and that just stuck hard. So
Interesting.
my kids grew up calling him Lolo. And on my wife's side, it was Baba and Poppy, and I don't actually know how they chose their names are Bob and Bev, and I'm inverting that. Baba is Bev and Poppy is Bob, and that just I don't know just how hard they thought about it. I think it came pretty easily. But our kids were the first in the family. Like my nephews weren't born until much later, and so we did have kind of they didn't get to choose. They just inherited.
May I tell a really random story that I love?
Please, that's what it's all about.
When my nephew was about, I think 6, my sister went away and negotiated with our mother and father to please take care of my nephew, Julian. My parents divorced when I was 11, and it was bitter and contentious, and they don't speak. They don't like each other. They hate each other. It was bad. They agreed to do some kind of handoff where they would meet in between the two homes and in a parking lot, and Julian could get out of one car and get into the other car. And Julian got out, and my father got out, my mother got out of their cars to do the handoff, and Julian said, "Oh, Bubba, do you know Nanny? Nanny, this is Bubba." And he introduced my parents to each other.
That is beautiful. I love that.
So sweet, because he doesn't, to their credit, he doesn't know they don't speak. Like, they did a good job of saying, "Oh, hi, good. How did it go? Nice to see you."
Right.
But very, very cute.
Oh, that's great.
And I love that. And also that's something we can relate on because while my mother has passed away, so this is no longer an issue. Like at a lot of like the big family events, like I remember my sister's college graduation, me and my sister had to coordinate. We never spent time with each other because one of us always had to be with our mother and one of us with our father. So they never had to be in the same room together.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. And it's why, like I said to Mary, like, I know her mother and stepmother don't always get along the best, but still the fact that they could work together on this, that was not happening in my family. But yeah, I just find things like that so fascinating, like how people choose, because I certainly grew up thinking, I may have told the story before, in which case I apologize. But I grew up thinking that like your mother's mother was called Grammy and your father's mother was called Nana. Or possibly that it was a Christian and Jewish thing. Sometimes I got confused about that part. But, so when I started meeting people who had different names, but yeah, that was just Grammy and Nana. And of course, I never had grandfathers because both of mine were dead by the time I was 2. So, yeah, it's it's just a wild world. All sorts of interesting new things to uncover. Now,
Well,
Pete,
again,
what was your second question? Going back to
that was it. That was it.
That was
It
it.
Oh,
was,
yeah, that's right.
It was
That's right.
how are you going to be referred to by your kiddo? And
Yeah.
it's I will say once again, I know this is my refrain. Your kid is going to make some decisions, and you will inherit those decisions, and it's awesome. It is just awesome. I never this never happened to me, but growing up, one of my best friends just started calling his parents Ma and Fa, and that seemed like it was straight out of Downton Abbey to me, but that stuck for 20 years. And until his parents, they were older and they passed, but that just seemed like completely foreign to me. And so I started when I was very young. I mean, I was probably 6 years old. For 2 years, I started calling my parents by their first names.
Oh,
Lloyd
very
and,
Greg
Lloyd and
Brady.
Debbie. Yeah.
Very Greg Brady.
Yeah, it was. It was very much like I would that. I mean, they just rolled with it because that's what I wanted to call them.
And
Well,
also,
go ahead.
Well, your child might choose for you. If the first sounds they make are like poo poo poo, you might decide you're going by poo poo. You know, I mean, it's you. They're going to run your life, Matthew, and they're going to tell you what you're going to be called literally from birth. They run your life.
That's one of the things that's most fun because they have no cultural imprint. Like they don't care about any of this stuff, and they're going to decide, and it's going to be glorious.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's that line, not to go back to the gender stuff, but just because I think it's kind of like, there's an important sort of interesting philosophical thing of like how, with all of it, one of my favorite songs in the whole world is from the musical South Pacific. You Have to Be Carefully Taught.
Are you asking me to sing? Because I'll do it.
I mean, we could do it as a duet. That could be our intro music. And then it's on True Stories, so Pete has to deal with a lawsuit. I'm fine with that.
With the clearance, yeah.
Well, they may be public use by now. I don't know. But just that idea that like, children don't, there's so many things that we imprint upon people that children aren't, they're not imprinted with the idea that grandfathers are supposed to be called this name or that name. But also, all the, sexism, capitalism, misogyny, like all the evil stuff. And yes, I will teach my kids not to necessarily tell everybody that capitalism is evil in school because I could get them in trouble as well. But that's anyway. But I think that's a lot of what we're thinking about from the beginning is just like, what are how do we avoid unintentionally teaching our children the things that are so often taught? Because we recognize it's a lot easier to try not to unintentionally teach than it is to intentionally teach. Because we're starting to think about what to name our child as well. That's going to be next week's discussion, I think, probably. But like we're thinking about like
I love that topic.
We're thinking about some of the stuff and we're thinking like, oh, okay, but like if we give them this name and this name, then this would be a great nickname. And I had to immediately be like, we don't have that much control.
No,
like they're going to be called what they're going to be called. I went by a different version of my name in college because a girl I dated for 3 weeks in high school, who I was way too obsessed with, had that as a nickname for me. And it was ridiculous. I'll own up to it. I'll tell the members after year 1.
Right, but also Matthew, save it for the name episode.
Right?
You just dictated our next episode, and I couldn't be more thrilled.
Yeah.
There you go.
Wow.
Anything else on the subject we want to say? We've come about to or almost to an hour, which is about when we're going to be wrapping up.
I feel like we could keep going because now I have fireworks brain going right now for all the things that we need to talk about around naming and identity, and we're going to hold on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, and I've got another like top 3 topic for us that I'll throw out that maybe for the members, maybe for the listeners club, maybe for the people who've bought me gifts off my baby shower registry. We got no idea yet. We're going to figure that all out. But I'm Matthew Fox. I'm the host of the Ethical Panda podcasts, Superhero Ethics, and Star Wars Generations. I'm also frequently a co-host on Marvel Movie Minute. Generally, if it's not a Marvel movie you like very much, I get dragooned into being a co-host. But apparently, if I say enough good things about the really bad movies, they'll let me talk about one of the fun ones. So far, I'm doing very badly at that, but I'm trying. But to my 2 wonderful co-hosts, why don't you guys say a bit more about how people can find your stuff?
I just learned the word dragooned, I think.
Oh, it's a great word, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. Although now I want those crab rangoon the Chinese wonton with the
You
cream.
could be
Anyway,
rangooned into something. Yeah.
yep.
Mhm.
I am Mandy Kaplan. I am the host of Make Me a Nerd with Mandy Kaplan on the True Story platform, and I'm on a journey to embrace nerd culture, one video game romantasy sci-fi series at a time.
And I'm Pete Wright, and with duct tape and bubble gum, I keep TrueStory.fm up and streaming your podcasts.
And we love you for it.
You beat me to it. I was going to say that.
We'll serenade him with South Pacific later. Well, thank you very much. We'll have that bonus section for some group of people that's yet to be determined in just a minute. For everybody else, thank you so much for listening. May the force be with you. All right, welcome back. So my top 3 topic that I have given my 2 co-hosts absolutely no preparation for is and it can be a specific movie or TV show, or it can just be a theme or a trope you've seen. But I'm curious, as we're in this period of me being like, oh, I'm getting ready for parenthood, and you two being like, oh, Matthew, you have no idea what you're getting into. What are some favorite scenes or tropes of characters who are getting ready for their first child and are thinking about what's going to happen, and you're sitting there watching going, wow, this person has no idea what they're getting into?
Oh,
Mandy?
No, you first. You always do that to me.
I just want to be nice.
Yeah.
There's, I mean, one is going to be very familiar to you, Matthew, and it's from a Star Wars movie, and there is a scene where the Luke Skywalker and Yoda are hanging out by a tree that is in flames, and Yoda says, "We are who they grow beyond." And this is referencing the decisions that the young make that we don't understand and we don't necessarily agree with, but we have to adapt. We are who they grow beyond. And that has stuck with, and it's very recent, right? I mean, that is a very new film. That's not something that I feel like I grew up with. It's just a scene that has stuck with me, just like an arrow in the chest that I have not been able to remove. And I have to think about that every time my kids do something bonkers that I don't understand. From my son deciding that he's gonna look better with the worst mustache ever. That's right. I'm outing him on a podcast. I've told him to his face. It's terrible. It needs to be shaved. But he has a mustache because, I don't know, Benson Boone, whatever.
Is he bringing back the 1970s Raleigh fingers with the curls at the edges?
That would be an improvement.
Okay.
So it's those kinds of things. We are who they grow beyond. We don't have a lot of say, and that's the thing that's the bit of media that I hit every time. Those lessons are incredibly valuable to recognize. It's sometimes I just have to sit back and watch.
I like it. It's funny too, because when you said Star Wars, what I thought you were going to is, I was earlier talking about some of the fears that I have as a parent. And certainly, though, that I know that like parenting out of fear is a terrible, terrible thing to do. And that's part of why I'm talking to you all about it, talking to my therapist about it, etc. Because what I thought you were going to say in Star Wars is perhaps the greatest example ever of why parenting out of fear of the potential child, what they could do or not do, is Anakin Skywalker. Right. Who literally decides to join the dark side because he thinks that the child and his wife are going to die in childbirth. So
yeah, I didn't want to bring that up. That's a sad one.
Well, there you go. I'm pretty sure that no matter what I'm afraid of, it won't lead me to commit genocide against an entire group of people.
Pretty sure. Cagey language.
99.999999999, etc. going on. Mandy, go ahead.
I'm struggling to answer this. I can't recall something in the media about anticipating having a child, but everything comes back to Friends and sitcoms for me. And I can remember when Rachel wanted to go back to work, but realized how difficult that is. And this idea that you really are forever changed. Yeah. You are a parent, and your priorities have changed. Your time has changed. Your body changes because you can't, stay fit the way you used to or do whatever. And I think we've seen that. I can't think of specific examples, but moments where a parent realizes, oh, my time is no longer my own.
Right.
You know, everything has shifted, and they think before they have a kid, well, I'll just go back to work after a couple weeks. Well, I'll just keep pursuing my career and my goals, and I won't miss
Yeah.
out on any fun family time and or fun time with my friends. I'll still go out with my friends, and a lot of
Mhm.
that changes. So I apologize for the non-specificity, but you should apologize for not sending the questions in advance.
That's very true. That's very true. Wait a minute. You're telling me that in this podcast about parenthood, everything should be planned ahead because we're always going to go according to plan?
Yes, but I'm also going to say always embrace plan B. That's a
Yes,
big
that's true.
motto of mine.
Right, you are
Well,
the
we're a
one
little
who
bit late for
repeatedly
Nice
that,
said,
try,
unfortunately.
Matthew, but I had to come back for it.
Tracy
We are a little
flick
late in the
memes
pregnancy for
here.
plan B. We do want
Yeah.
to go ahead, but yes, no, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And what about, you don't know yet.
I'll say
You're a future parent.
There's two that comes to mind. One, recently I've been rewatching ER, because we watched The Pit and I really got into that and made me think about medical dramas and stuff. And so I wanted to rewatch ER. Still a fun show. Some parts of it have aged very badly.
Very badly.
Some parts of it aged quite well. But it is interesting how there's a couple of characters we've seen now who often it's just a patient of the week and stuff like that, but also like Dr. Benton and stuff like that, where they talk about all their plans and expectations for the baby. And some of it is the kind of stuff you were talking about like the same plans you're gonna have a career. And the thing that I think a lot about is, and I think this is kind of helping me prepare, is not even the idea of like, here's my specific plan of how many times I'll see my friends, but that I imagine I'll have the same priorities. And then I keep, there's one of my favorite scenes in the TV show West Wing. And I'm going to have some spoilers for this. Forgive me, but there's a plot line in, I believe it's the beginning of season 5, or the end of season 4. But basically, the president's daughter gets kidnapped, and the president realizes that he himself probably can't, like, the decision that his country is going to make about this act of war, of the kidnapping of the daughter of the president, versus his decisions as a father whose daughter has been kidnapped and put in danger, that he needs to step down. And a lot of his aides are arguing, like, should you do that? Should you not do that? Etc. And one of his aides is Toby Ziegler, who has had his children born basically as this is all happening. And there's this wonderful moment where like he's talking to everybody else and they're all horrified and upset, and he looks so embarrassed to tell them the news, that he had the twins. But he had said a lot of times that he was afraid he wouldn't love his children the way he thought he would, or that he was afraid that he wasn't ready to be a parent. And there's this great moment where he meets his children for the first time and says, no, I get it now. And then he comes back into that political discussion and says, guys, I've been a parent for five seconds, and I know I would do anything in the world for my kids. The president has to step down.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't think I'm going to face anything like that kind of decision. But to me, it's just such a wonderful example of a character realizing not just that like their time has changed, that their calendar's changed, but the basic framework in which they approach the world has fundamentally shifted.
Yep.
And I think that's something that I'm because of that scene, I'm much more aware of characters who don't seem to have that. And then the other one I'll list, and then let you guys list one more. We don't have to do top 3. And this is kind of related to the stuff we're talking about before, but is like we talk about like soccer moms and like baseball dads and stuff like that, or theater parents or stuff like that. And I think that can be taken to a stereotype that's quite bad and quite funny. And I was a Little League umpire. I've dealt with some really horrible parents. But I do think that even if you're not at that level, there definitely does seem to be a level of that I see a lot, especially on TV, but also with real people, of like, oh, I can't wait to play catch with my dad, or I can't wait to teach my daughter cooking, or, things like this that are often, but not always gendered, but are still just expectations of, here's a thing I love doing with my parent, so I'm sure my child will love doing it with me, and I can't wait to do that. And that's another one where I think like, yeah, like, I don't have many of those because I had kind of shitty parents for a long time, but a lot of issues in the past. But they both, again, were acting out of love in all the ways. But also even the ones that I do, trying to remind myself, like, my child may not be a Mets fan the way, like, sports was always a thing I could talk about with my dad, even when things were at their worst. And we're talking about sports today. And I had to remind myself, my child may not love sports the way I do. And frankly, the more I try to push that, probably the less they will love sports.
Right.
They're going to wear a lot of New York Mets, New York Jets onesies, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I think that's the other one I notice a lot is the kind of like people planning for, I can't wait for when my child is excited about this thing that I'm excited about. And just the recognition of like, oh, you have no idea what your child's going to like. And they may have no interest in that thing, especially the more you push it.
Yeah.
That's the really interesting thing. But I'll tell you again, with the benefit of just a few more years, I am constantly surprised at the things my kids don't want to do with me. And that means when my son comes around and says, "Hey, Dad, I'm a podcast editor now for the University of Oregon news station, and do you want to do a podcast with me?"
Oh,
what?
Wow.
What? Are you what? Like that's
Yeah.
Those things are the gifts that are, here 20 years in the making, and it's incredible.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. It was as an adult that I learned to be interested in cooking and became very interested in cooking. And my mom and I got really into cooking together and became something really shared. And she laughed at me that my initial interest in it was to impress girls, but still,
Doesn't matter.
We came around and I still get to do it. All right. Any last things you guys want to add to this, or should we close out?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Although I'll throw in Father of the Bride too.
Yeah, is that a fun movie?
Well, it's one of those things. The moment when you see you've already talked about it. It gives us a moment when you see your baby for the first time, and what Mandy said, like it's not your life is going to change.
Yeah,
it's the fact that your life changes instantly, like in the amount of time it takes to blink. You realize your entire worldview is on its head in really fundamental, foundational ways, and that's a thing that I marvel at constantly as I look at my kids. I don't remember who I was before. There was a before, and there is a now, and I'm a different person.
I like it.
So
I like it.
That's it.
Right.
I'm officially finished.
Different, but better. Let's not
There you go.
scare Matthew.
Maybe the jury's out. I don't know. We'll see.
Nah, I'm impervious to fear. I have chronic anxiety. I'm afraid of everything already.
All right.
So we're all good. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. Thank you to our listeners. Live
Thanks,
long and
everybody.
prosper.
Bye.
We don't